All right, let's dive in. Some of you send over this research on IT project failures, and wow, it's kind of scary stuff.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
We're looking at work by Dr. Daryl Carlton,
He really gets into the nitty-gritty of these tech disasters.
and he uses this case study, the Queensland Health Payroll Project.
Oh, yeah, that one's a classic example of how not to do it.
Total budget blowouts, chaos, real people affected.
Exactly. It's a cautionary tale for anyone in IT, really.
To help unpack all this, we've got an expert with us today. Welcome.
Glad to be here.
So, Dr. Carlton, he kicks things off with this quote from Dracula. We learn from failure, not from success.
Sets the mood, right?
A little ominous, but hey, we're here for the truth.
That's what matters.
Now, before we get too deep, I gotta ask, ever heard of Cobb's paradox?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those things that just makes you scratch your head.
Like, we know why projects fail,
We even know how to prevent them from failing.
but they still do.
All the time and spectacularly.
Dr. Carlton's research digs into that, like, why?
Yeah, it's more than just an academic question.
Right, this stuff has real-world consequences.
Huge consequences.
So how often are we talking about here?
Well, Dr. Carlton, he gives this statistic about large IT projects.
The ones with the big budgets
Over $100 million.
and their success rate.
Prepare yourself, it's pretty wild.
Hit me with it.
Just 2%.
2%. Success rate 2%. It's mind-blowing.
Like, imagine those odds.
Would you even start a project knowing that?
Not a chance.
And it gets worse because there's this concept called the fat tail. When these projects fail, they don't just fail a little, they implode. Average cost overruns 447%.
447%, that's insane.
It is. And that's where the Queensland Health Payroll Project comes in.
That's where the rubber meets the road.
It's a perfect illustration of this.
Tell me about it. What happened?
Well, it was supposed to be this modernization effort.
Streamline payroll for healthcare workers.
Tens of thousands of them.
Sounds good on paper. Right. But instead, it turned into this multi-billion-dollar nightmare.
Costs went through the roof. The system was a mess.
Healthcare workers weren't getting paid.
The government's reputation just trashed.
It dragged on for years.
Classic example of what not to do.
Exactly.
So is it one big mistake or
That's where Dr. Carlton's 5 whys analysis comes in.
5 whys?
He uses it to peel back the layers,
Get to the root of the problem.
Exactly. You keep asking why to figure out what's really going on.
Like an investigation.
Kind of, but it's surprisingly effective.
So walk me through it. How does he apply this to Queensland Health?
Okay, so the first why is the most obvious one.
Why did the whole thing fail?
Right. And for Dr. Carlton, it's 2 things. A defective system and awful governance.
The system itself was broken.
Basically, yeah. Couldn't handle the complexity.
And then on top of that, bad leadership.
No clear accountability, no one making decisions effectively.
So a broken system and no one at the wheel. This is already giving me anxiety.
I know, right? But then, why was the system so messed up in the first place?
Yeah, that's a pretty fundamental problem.
That's the second why. And this is where we see the issues with requirements and testing.
They were rushed.
Totally. Incomplete. And they didn't even reflect what the system actually needed to do.
Like building a house without a blueprint.
Exactly.
Was there no one who understood what the system was supposed to do?
This is where the third why gets interesting.
Lay it on me.
There was a real lack of expertise in the people defining those requirements.
They didn't actually understand healthcare payroll.
Nope. It's like asking a baker to design a spaceship.
Good at baking, not so much with spaceships.
Exactly.
So they needed someone who knew healthcare payroll.
A specialist, not just a general IT person.
Okay, makes sense. But if they didn't have that in-house, why not bring in outside help?
That brings us to the fourth why, and it's a common problem.
What's that?
Over-reliance on external vendors.
They outsourced it.
Big chunk of it went to IBM, yeah.
But they didn't know how to manage them.
Right. They didn't cultivate that internal expertise alongside it.
They outsourced the thinking, not just the doing.
Exactly.
So, last dollar, why was there no one watching to make sure this didn't happen?
This is the most troubling part, I think.
Hit me with it.
There was no clear governance structure, too many stakeholders, no one with real authority.
Just chaos.
Total chaos.
Dr. Carlton calls this situational incompetence, right?
Yeah, he does.
Sounds ominous.
It is. It means that even if people are generally competent, they might not have the right skills for this situation.
Oh, okay.
Even whole teams can be like that.
Wow.
And that's especially dangerous in projects like this one.
Right, with so much at stake.
Exactly.
Decisions made without the right knowledge, I mean.
It can have huge consequences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This 5 whys. It's really eye-opening.
It is.
But also kind of depressing, seeing how one thing leads to another. And
I get it, but that's what makes his work so important.
oh, how so?
He doesn't just point fingers.
How?
He actually offers solutions.
Based on his research.
Exactly. He really believes we can learn from these messes.
Avoid making the same mistakes.
Yeah, that's the goal.
I'm all ears. What's the first step to avoid another Queensland health situation?
Robust governance. He can't stress that enough.
But what does that actually mean?
It's more than just meetings and committees.
Right.
It's about clear roles.
Okay.
Responsibilities from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
People need to know who's in charge.
Makes sense.
And be able to make decisions.
Right.
And be held accountable at every level.
So like a captain steering the ship.
Exactly. Not just a bunch of people arguing about where to go.
Love that analogy. But is that enough? Just good leadership?
It's a big part, but you also need constant monitoring.
Okay.
Independent reviews. Even
checkups.
Yeah, for the project's health.
I like that.
Track progress, identify risks early.
Before it's too late. Speaking of risks, does he talk about that?
Oh, absolutely. Comprehensive risk management.
Would you?
Knowing what could go wrong, how likely it is, and what the impact would be.
So you can prepare.
Right. And then develop strategies to deal with those risks.
So it's not about eliminating every risk.
No, it's about understanding them and managing them.
Having a backup plan, or even a backup for the backup plan.
Exactly.
I like that. What about those vendors? Managing them well.
He talks a lot about that too. Vendor selection is crucial.
Picking the right ones.
Yes. And managing them once they're on board.
Right.
Outsourcing can be great, but you got to choose wisely.
Due diligence and all that.
Exactly. Proven track record, clear expectations.
Put it all in the contract.
Yes. And don't just assume they know what they're doing.
Trust, but verify.
Right. Ask tough questions, hold them accountable.
This is great stuff. He also talks about building expertise internally, right?
That's a really good point.
Because wouldn't that contradict outsourcing?
It seems that way, but it's key. You can't just outsource your way to success.
Okay.
You need people inside who understand your organization's needs,
right,
who can manage the project.
And make sure it actually works for you.
Exactly.
So it's finding that balance. External help, but also having your own people.
Exactly. You don't want to be totally dependent on the vendor.
What if things go wrong?
Then you need that in-house knowledge to take control.
Makes sense. He also looks at the legal side of this, right?
He does.
I mean, when a project goes this bad, surely there are lawsuits.
Oh, yeah. He's actually doing ongoing research on that.
What's he finding?
How courts assign blame when IT projects fail.
Interesting.
And it turns out contract breaches and misrepresentation are huge.
So vendors are held accountable.
More and more, yeah. And that trend's probably going to continue.
It's not just about the money either, right?
No. It's about reputation, avoiding legal battles that drag on.
Yeah, no one wants that. It's amazing how much we can learn from this one case.
It is, isn't it?
But it's important to remember the people affected too.
Absolutely.
The healthcare workers who weren't getting paid.
Yeah.
Imagine that stress, the hardship.
It's a reminder that these projects aren't just about technology. Right. They're about people. And when they fail, people suffer.
Their lives are disrupted. Their trust is broken.
It takes a long time to rebuild that trust.
There's this one quote from the inquiry into the project.
Oh, yeah.
It says, its failure, attended by enormous cost, damage to government, and impact on workforce, may be the most spectacular example of all the unsuccessful attempts to impose a uniform solution on a highly complicated and individualized agency.
Wow. That's powerful.
Right. It really gets to the heart of it.
Trying to force a one-size-fits-all solution.
When that clearly wasn't going to work.
Each project is different, needs a tailored solution.
Can't just assume what works somewhere else will work here.
Exactly. And don't forget about change management either.
Oh, right. People need to be on board with the new system.
Absolutely. Involve them early, train them properly, address their concerns.
It's not just installing new software.
No, it's bringing people along in the journey.
Making sure they're comfortable with the changes.
You got it. Dr. Carlton's insights, they're like a roadmap.
To navigate these tricky projects.
Right. Understand the pitfalls, follow his recommendations.
Increase your chances of success.
And avoid those costly, painful failures.
Exactly. So we've been talking about this Queensland project and what we can learn from it. But Dr. Carlton doesn't stop there. He goes even further. Towards the end, he asks this question, and it's kind of spooky.
What is it?
What happens when AI projects fail?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Because those are getting bigger and more complex all the time.
Yeah, the stakes are higher with AI.
Way higher. We saw what happened with regular IT, but AI. This could affect healthcare, finance,
transportation, even criminal justice.
Exactly. Areas where mistakes have huge consequences.
And not just mistakes, bias too.
Oh, right. The AI could be biased?
If the data it learns from is biased.
It'll make biased decisions.
Exactly. And that could be really bad.
So, can't just blindly trust these systems.
Definitely not. That's where all this research comes in.
Even more relevant now with AI.
Absolutely. Governance, vendor selection, expertise.
All that stuff we talked about.
What's even more important now?
But on top of that,
we need ways to oversee these AI systems.
Okay.
Test them, make sure they're doing what they should.
Like specific to AI, not just general IT stuff.
Right. And we need to involve more people.
Like who?
Ethicists, people who study society.
Interesting.
Different stakeholders to make sure it's done responsibly.
Sounds like a whole new ballgame.
It kind of is.
Can't use the old playbook for this.
No, we got to be proactive.
Not just react when things go wrong.
Exactly. Anticipate problems, have plans in place.
Because AI, it can do unpredictable things.
Yeah, no system is perfect, but AI is especially tricky.
A lot to think about. Any final thoughts for our listener?
I think Dr. Carlton's work, it's a wake-up call. As we get into this AI world, we got to be careful. Be a little skeptical, understand the risks.
Technology is powerful, but
it's only as good as the people using it.
So, to everyone listening, next time you're on a big project, remember this Queensland mess.
And Dr. Carlton's advice.
Ask the tough questions. Don't just assume things.
Speak up if something seems off.
Whether it's AI or anything else, it's our responsibility.
To use technology the right way.
Ethically, effectively, all that good stuff. Until next time, keep diving deep and stay curious.